As board chair of Virginia Episcopal School, it is my sincere pleasure to welcome back and reintroduce our old friend and VES's 13th head of school, Garth Ainslie. The Board of Trustees could not be more pleased to have Garth's leadership during these extraordinarily challenging times. Garth enters his role with deep VES roots. Garth and his siblings, Lee and Liz, grew up on the VES campus when their father, Sandy Ainslie, served as VES's 8th headmaster from 1974 to 1981. Garth attended VES sports camp and was a VES student in grades 7 through 10 from 1977 to 1981. Garth's mother, Sharon Ainslie, served as a VES trustee. Following high school, Garth earned the prestigious Moorhead Scholarship and matriculated to the University of North Carolina. At Chapel Hill, he met his wife, Ann Ragsdale Ainslie, who now serves as VP of Field Relations for Beauty Counter. Many of you will remember that Ann helped plan and perfectly execute VES's spectacular centennial celebration in 2016. Garth got his feet wet in the world of education when he taught and coached at Ransom Everglades School in Florida. He later earned his JD from the University of Colorado at Boulder and practiced law as Associate General Counsel for Vail Resorts. Garth then spent 13 years with Solomon Smith Barney Citigroup in New York City as Director of Institutional Equities Research Sales. After re-engaging with VES as a member of its Board of Trustees, VES named Garth Associate Headmaster for Advancement in 2012, a role he served for 5 years during a period of unprecedented growth in the school's admissions and development programs. During this time, Garth also served as an advisor to students and a trusted confidant to the faculty and staff. Outside of work, Garth enjoys biking the Blue Ridge Parkway or spending a Sunday afternoon cooking for his family. Garth and Ann have 2 sons, Quinn, a recent UNC graduate, and Hayne, a senior at Washington and Lee. The VES community could not be more excited to welcome Garth and his family home to Lynchburg.
This is such a treat for me to be able to have a conversation with our new head of school, Garth Ainslie. I used to work with Garth when he was here before, and he's a fantastic person to have on the team. We are just so delighted that he chose to come back to VES, back here on the old 160, and even back into a home that he grew up in. So we're going to talk tonight about Garth. We're going to talk about the school and all that has gone on this past semester, and we're going to hear a little bit about his vision for the future. So, Garth, let's do a real quick review of you.
Okay.
I always think this is kind of fun. So you were a former student, son of a headmaster, Sandy Ainslie, which many people listening may remember, graduate of Episcopal High School, Moorhead Scholar at Chapel Hill. Then you went to Boulder, New York, LA. You've gotten around. You've worked in law, finance, education, admissions and development, a former VES trustee, former associate head of school for advancement, and now the 13th head of school for VES.
I know.
So what strikes me is that no matter where you've lived, what you've been working on in your career, you've always found a way to stay very closely connected to VES.
Absolutely true. VES has always just been a very special place to me. Not only growing up in this house, I mean, I moved here when I was in 4th grade, went to Paul Monroe up the street, played on the football team, and to have so many great memories of growing up on this campus. And then being a student, I started here when we used to have a 7th grade. There was a 7th and 8th grade program. And so I was here 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th. And that experience really influenced the trajectory of my life. I had, and some of our more younger alums may not recognize all these names, but they'll recognize a lot. But when you go through some of those iconic VES teachers, I had so many of them. I had Phil Garmy and Steve Culbertson for French. I had John Foster and Jay Height for English. I was actually, Babes Hopkins asked me to be in a play, so I got to be on stage with Mr. Hopkins, which was just an incredible experience. And I had Doug Smith for history. I had Rock Lee. I think people forget he was a great math teacher in addition to being a wonderful coach and great person. So I got the full VES experience, and just always will look back on VES with just such fond memories.
That's amazing. I mean, some huge heavy hitter names that you were taught by. That's awesome. How has it felt to come home?
It feels like I'm home. It really does. I was amazed when I was here before. I came back in 2012, just before you joined the team. It was so easy to feel welcomed and accepted by this community, and so easy to find ways where you felt like I could have an impact on the admissions side and in the admissions and development office, but really felt very connected to the whole community and the families we got to know and the kids who were here. And so coming back has been, again, it feels like I'm home. The house looks nothing like it did when I grew up, because we've done some really incredible work to it, thanks to the generosity of one of our donors. So it feels different, but this, again, the community has been so supportive and accepting, and really the challenge has been trying to feel at home in the COVID world with masks and distancing, and just not being able to have those connections that we were so used to having.
Right, and we'll get to talking about some of that and how that's impacted school this year. Take us back to an early memory from when you were on campus, whether that's as a child growing up here or a fun campus story that you may only tell at parties.
My most vivid childhood memory started in Lynchburg, and just growing up as a young child on this campus, going to all the football games and basketball games, and when you're in fourth grade, all of the seniors look like they're full-grown adults, and hearing all the names and all the people. One of the things I think that hasn't really changed about VES is it's a small community. You know everybody. So I was always had so much respect and admiration for the VES students and VES boys back then. It was all boys, and they were just, to me, larger than life. The football heroes and the basketball stars were just such heroes to me growing up. So that was, it's really hard for me not to think of my childhood in Lynchburg and at VES.
So I want to dig just a little bit deeper into your time at school as a student. You must have been a good student. You ended up being a Moorhead Cain Scholar. But tell us a few moments or a funny story, and maybe a favorite class, favorite teacher.
Well, I will say that particularly when I was at VES, I was a very good student, and I had fantastic faculty. And I think about some of the impact that they've had. Doug Smith, who really taught me how to think critically, write well, outline when I take notes, which I still do to this day. And so some of those skills. And again, I referenced it earlier, but one of my memories was, I think when Mr. Hopkins did the plays, there were no auditions. He just simply picked people he thought would be effective. And I don't think he thought I had any particular talent, but he didn't teach any ninth graders, and I was a faculty child, so I was probably the only ninth grade boy he knew. So he tapped me to be in the play, but that was, I'd never been up on stage before. When Mr. Hopkins was known for putting on incredible production, so it was a real serious commitment, and to be able to be put up on stage in front of all your friends and classmates and peers is just what a great experience. So I have such fond memories of all of my teachers, my classmates, the sports. It was just, I was all in.
When you heard that the opening was coming available for head of school, what this time really pushed you to say, I'm ready to lead at VES?
Catherine, it was really the support I got from my colleagues on the advancement team. I got such great encouragement from families at VES who I'd gotten to know, who encouraged me. from trustees who really encouraged me to apply. And it just, I never, when I came to VES in 2012, it was a change of career, and I never thought of it as something I was going to pursue. I came because I felt I could help in the admissions office. And then that morphed into a role in the admissions and development offices. But that was because I felt like places where I thought I could add value and where Tommy thought I could add value. And so in this, I never saw myself being a head of school. In fact, I probably spent the first part of my life thinking I would never be a head of school and following my dad's footsteps. And it's just funny how things unfold. And so I felt that there was a need and some potential, and I felt that I had such great relationships with the leadership team especially, that I was hopeful that I could come and add value and do something good for the school, because I owe it a lot.
So when you accepted this job last November, I don't think any of us could have anticipated what the world was going to be like when you actually came into your position. COVID times and so many other things happening around the globe. Talk to me about how you decided the priorities for the school when you first arrived.
Well, they were sort of decided for me, and COVID became the big priority. And even though we've got other issues to work on and address, and even though we got a strategic plan we need to attack, I really am so proud of the VES team and how it handled the transition to virtual school in March. I think it was acted early, and the communication was very good. I'm not just saying that to be nice to you, but it really was. I thought the VES handled that really well as I looked at how other schools were doing. That was a big challenge, and it was a question of, can we open in the fall? How do we open in the fall? What's the timing? Is there going to be a second wave? As you may recall, we were still planning in April to have a July graduation. We thought we'd be able to get those kids back to campus, and that didn't happen. And so I saw other schools really spinning their wheels, going through so many different scenarios. And I thought what was brilliant about VES, I think the board challenged us. And I remember speaking to Mike Alford, and he said, look, I'm a car business and I'm considered to be an essential service. I have to figure out how to be open every day. Why doesn't VES figure out what do you guys need to be open in the fall? And so when we looked at it through that lens, it was just incredible, because we've got such an incredible team of people who are hard workers and doers. But when you give Chris Button and Amy Coleman a challenge of what's it going to take to find classroom space, they measure every square inch of class, 6 feet distance between the desks. They find indoor space, outdoor space. Chris had so many calls with our medical team, and he really was an incredible leader of that. Of the Open Well Task Force. So that was amazing, but then you've got to figure out, how do you design a curriculum for some kids not being able to get back, some kids are going to be back in person, and not knowing, are you going to be in school for 2 weeks and have to shut down, and the governor's going to send everybody home. And so Mimi Chutlos and Jen Anderson designed a brand new school for us, the hybrid model, and our faculty spent their summers trying to figure out how do you teach virtually and in person at the same time. Completely redesigned our curriculum. And so every time we had a challenge, we were able to meet it. And again, we had this wonderful partnership with the board. They challenged us to figure out how to be open, and then said, tell us what it's going to take. And so we talked a little bit about the classroom space. We needed to redesign our health center. We needed a health center where we didn't have to send sick kids back to dorm. And then we needed isolation space. We needed more dorm space. We needed to find money for ongoing COVID expenses, such as testing and PPE. And so we ended up spending $2 million on COVID expenses this year. And some of it are capital, and some of them are just ongoing operational expenses. But the board was so wonderful in saying, you tell us what you need, and we'll figure out how to make it happen. So we opened well. We had an amazing fall, not without our challenges and ups and downs, but I'm really proud of the entire school community, from leadership team to the faculty, to the kids, frankly, who really, again, it wasn't all smooth sailing, but they really began to accept the reasons behind why we were asking them to do the things we wanted them to do. And as a result, we had, we had one positive case this fall, and we think that was probably a false positive. It happened in the first 2 weeks. And after that, not a single positive case, and that's not for lack of testing. We tested, at the end of the semester, we were testing weekly, and we tested all the kids before they went home to make sure we sent the kids home safe and sound. And so, again, it was challenging, but I am just so proud of what we were able to accomplish this fall.
Mm-hmm. Well, certainly the health and wellness of the community was at the forefront. Talk about some of the true moments of joy, because it was a long 11-week stretch. Everybody was tired at the end, but throughout, every day I came to campus, you would just see the joy for the kids in particular as they were together and going to class and sports. So talk a little bit about what did you take away from that?
Yeah, and I don't want to put words into the kids' mouths, and you need to ask them for yourselves. But here, my observation, Catherine, is just like yours. I've never seen our kids outside so much. So we had classes outside, we had chairs outside, we had games outside. And so I think that's just something we want to emulate in future years. Figure out how we can do more outside. The kids weren't able to leave campus, so they were here 24/7. And on the weekends, instead of having a lot of kids going home, or a few kids going home for the weekends, or kids going out to dinner, or going to the mall, or going to Target, or whatever, they were here. And so I think they were so resilient in finding ways to connect with each other. And I really, I think that they were able to make friends outside their normal social groups. I think that the kids who embraced it, just to have 90 kids show up on a Friday night for a game of Assassins is just awesome. I mean, and unfortunately, the parents couldn't see it because they weren't on campus all the time. But when you walked around VES on most days, and we had the most incredible weather, it was a remarkable time to be on this campus, and the bonds that were created are going to last a lifetime.
Mm-hmm. And the faculty absolutely stepped up in ways they haven't been tasked with ever. Talk a little bit about some of the unique methods of teaching or the interactions they had with the students.
Trying to take your traditional curriculum, which is taught in person in a small classroom, and translate that into an outdoor space. And by the way, it's got to be virtual for the students who are remote and can't get back, was really, really hard and difficult. I mean, everybody had to revamp their curriculum. We changed to we had fewer classes, longer periods. It really shook up the entire teaching world. And later on that on the weekends, you've got everybody here. So there's really was very little downtime. So it was extremely challenging to the faculty. But I just, a couple memories I will always cherish are when I was on a lot of Zoom calls with other heads of school talking about opening up. One of the common questions was how many of your faculty are not coming back? And at VES, it was zero. But at a lot of other schools had challenges of faculty who really were very anxious about being in the classroom with students in a COVID world. And I think to the contrary, our faculty could not wait to get back into the classroom with these students. Again, really, really impressed by what our faculty was able to do.
Great. You mentioned earlier the tremendous board support, and I think one of the things that I'm excited about is just, in normal times, the parents do see their kids and they get them home or they come visit. And this year, for the first time, we had probably every 2 to 3 weeks conversations, Zoom webinars with the parents. And I was really pleased to see how the school listened and responded to input, both with parents and with students. I know you pulled together a team of students, sort of a cross-section of the school, and every single week would ask what we're doing well and what we need to do better.
Yeah. Well, it was, again, there's no COVID playbook. No school had one. We certainly didn't have one, and we knew it was going to be a learning experience. And it was, again, it was a challenging fall. We took it slowly, and we had issues with, kids feeling the food service delivery was really challenging. And we've got the greatest food partners in the world, Meriwether Garths, but they couldn't do what they normally do. They had to do it in a COVID-friendly way, so it's grab and go food, which was problematic. And again, we did not do everything perfectly, other than protect the health and well-being of the students. But I think we did listen well, and we tried to listen well, and we continue to try to listen. And so we had a number of Zoom calls with families, and sometimes they were pretty happy, and sometimes they were frustrated, and they'd let us know that. And then we had that great student task force panel you were a part of, and and I think it was great to see. I think the first time we asked the students to show up and said, we really want to know what you're feeling. I think the students approached it with some trepidation, but I really think over the course of the semester we built a lot of trust. And part of that was because we delivered a lot of the things they asked for, and when we couldn't, I think we tried to be very transparent about why this isn't going to work. I think listening to the students who are the ones living here is the most important constituency during the school year.
Well, and they were so thankful. They want to see it continued in the spring, which I think is really wonderful. One of the things too that excited me is we have a whole new group of boarders. Oh, yeah. Tell a little bit about that.
Well, I'm amazed at the number of international students who did make it back to campus and the lengths they were willing to go to get here. So I'm really, it's a real testament to the school that these students value their place on this campus, that they were willing to fly to another country or fly to Dubai, quarantine there for 2 weeks, and fly to the United States, quarantine here for 2 weeks. I mean, for an adolescent to quarantine for a month before they can get into the campus is challenging. So the kids were super resilient. With the international students who let us know they couldn't return, we were able to open up our dorms to some of our traditional day families. And so we had, I think, 27 families decided to take us up on that offer and became boarders for the fall, many of whom will continue being boarders for the spring. And so, and I think most of those students just had an incredibly rich experience of actually getting to experience VES from the boarding perspective.
Beyond the COVID challenge and all the work that was being done there, what were some of the other big priorities and activities?
At the core of it, I think one of the things that makes VES so special is that we treat people well, and that's an expectation. And I know it doesn't happen 100% all the time, but that is certainly the expectation, that we respect each other, we support each other, and we treat each other well. But I'm really proud of the way our kids went into the election. We set up viewing rooms for the GOP and for the Democratic Party, and it was really fun on election night going back and toggling back and forth between those two rooms and watching the students, be excited together and be sad together. But then at 9:30 it was time to go back to dorm, and that's when you go back and everybody's got to be respectful of other people's opinions and thoughts. And I thought our faculty really worked hard going into the election and thinking about how and setting up basic expectations for how we're going to handle win, lose, or draw, whatever the outcome is. We are going to be, the faculty needed to be the adults in the room, but it went much more smoothly than I'd anticipated.
Well, what I was excited about is just to see how well the faculty incorporated conversation around the election and around social justice issues into our student life curriculum and on dorm and in the classroom. I think it was, an all points effort that was really great. So talk a little bit about the work around development. I mean, one thing schools have to do is raise funds to support the campus and to support the programming that we do. So what's one of the exciting things that happen in the fall there?
We've had an incredible year of fundraising. Our head of development, Henry Clark, who most of our alumni know, is really gifted, and his leadership has been amazing. But when I was in the February board meeting, and I'd been selected, but I didn't start till July, we were having a lot of discussions about this academic building, which had been part of the strategic campus master plan, identified as real need when I was leaving school in 2017. But I didn't realize we had made that much progress in making that a reality. And so I was actually a little surprised in February at the amount of time we spent talking about it, because wasn't sure we were quite there from a fundraising perspective. But lo and behold, we've had Will Panel really step forward to say, hey, we need to build this building. The fact that the teachers need it, the students need it. Let's stop talking about it. Let's do it. So he came through with a wonderful gift. And then we had one of the most incredible fundraising stories I've seen in seeing a group of friends wanting to honor Chris Smith, who's suffering from ALS right now. And led by a group of Chris friends, and particularly Don White, this group worked really hard to raise money to honor their friend Chris and to honor him for all that he's done. But we ended up raising $1 million for Chris, which then was matched on a 2-for-1 basis by Chris's family. And so as a result, we were able to have the naming ceremony for Panel Smith Hall just before the kids came back. They're two people who have done so much for this school, and they're both friends of mine, and it just was such a special moment for the school to be able to have the naming ceremony and to be able to look both those men in the eye and their families in the eye and say thank you for what you've done for VES and this incredible legacy you're going to create. We don't build a lot of new buildings at VES. We've done a great job of repurposing old spaces and making them look new. And so to put a new building on this campus is kind of an overwhelming task. We have such a beautiful traditional campus, and we found the right architects, Clave and Holmes out of Richmond, who really knew how to honor what has come before, yet create a building that's going to feel modern and appropriate for today's learning environment. And I can't wait for everybody to see this. I can't wait for the kids to start using it. Can't wait for the faculty to have the proper teaching spaces that they've been lacking for so many years, as we've been shoehorning folks into Jet and Pendleton just like when they did when I was a kid. So it's exciting.
That's a great segue into your vision for the school. And you were part of the team that led the work on developing this 5 to 7 year strategic plan that we have in place. And talk about, what do you see over the next 5 years?
I feel very fortunate, again, coming into the school where I haven't been asked to come up with a strategic plan or identify the academic vision. We've already done that. My job is simple. I need to make sure we can execute on these ideas we've talked about. So these strategic vision ideas, how do we translate those into practical steps and progress, and how do I hold us accountable for making progress towards those goals? Now, obviously, in a COVID year, we get a little bit of a hall pass, and we're not making a ton of progress on the strategic plan, but we're already starting to have conversations about what do we need to put into place, starting work on this summer, to really help get down the road on those. So that's job one, strategic plan. And then number two, my vision for the school is, one, that we can maintain those traditional qualities that make VES so special. We're intentionally small. We're 260 kids. We don't, I wouldn't want us to be much bigger, but if it were, we'd have got to figure out how to put more kids into the chapel, more kids into the dining hall, and some of those issues. So I don't anticipate us getting a lot bigger, but I would like to see us continue to make gains in our domestic boarding program, which is an area that all boarding schools are struggling with right now. And we've made so much progress even since I've left. So again, kudos to Tommy and his leadership, and especially to Justine Button and the fabulous admissions team. But the caliber of boarding students that we're getting, I think, just continues to improve every year. But that's, domestic boarding is a challenge for every boarding school in this country. And so I think where we're going to be doing our work and really shining is, one, making sure it starts with the faculty. And so having the right faculty, make sure we're retaining the right faculty, and that those, just like those great faculty members I mentioned who made careers at VES, making sure that their predecessors who are here on campus now are going to continue their careers at VES and have the impact on so many generations of students. But if we do a good job of taking care of kids and create a good experience for the parents, that's going to help us a lot in our recruiting efforts. I will say the other piece, Catherine, is again, knowing who we are. So we're a small school, intentionally small. So VES is a place where you should expect every faculty member and everybody on campus to know who you are and know your name. You should be able to find your niche here more easily than you would at a bigger school. I would say we know our markets. Like, we're not spending time up in New York or California trying to recruit students. We'd love to have students from those different states. We've got a new young man from Idaho this semester, and so we'd love the geographic diversity, but we know our bread and butter is going to be Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, West Virginia, just like it was when I was a student here, and those are places where families can get in the car, drive to campus, watch their son play soccer or watch their daughter be in the play. And that's important to how we parent today. So again, we're going to keep focusing on doing really well in our core markets, and that's where we're going to spend our energy. And of course, we've also done a great job in our international markets as well. So we've got about 20% of our students are international. One of the things that's changed, and this is a testament to Mary Stuart Battle's leadership when she was Director of International Enrollment, we've really diversified. And so there's been, I think lots of schools are getting tons of demand from Asia, and that's a very important market to us. But now we've got kids from Mexico, we've got kids from Saudi Arabia, we've got kids from Europe. And so we've really made progress in diversifying our international representation, and so that's really important. But that's, in a nutshell, my vision is we're going to get great faculty and make sure we pay them well and we can keep them. They're going to help us retain and attract great students. And then that other big piece out there is the affordability, and that's something that I don't have any easy answers to. Well, actually, I've got an easy answer. We need to raise endowment and make sure that VES is affordable to families, and especially affordable to our key constituencies, our alumni. We want our alumni looking at those alumni who will tell me VES changed the trajectory of their lives, but then they say, but I don't think I can afford VES because I've got to pay for college. And my message to you is, don't rule us out. Come to campus, take a look, and let's try to see if this is a good option for you. We're going to continue to work on expanding our financial aid offerings, but at the end of the day, I don't think any school is ever going to be able to expand financial aid fast enough if you keep raising tuition so quickly. So at some point, and one of the things I think Henry has done a beautiful job of in development is really being smart about how do we raise endowment dollars to offset operating costs so that we don't just have to look to that tuition lever to raise money. That's a lever that schools have been pulling on for a lot of years, and I don't know how much longer that's going to be a successful strategy.
Well, so Garth, what excites you the most about looking ahead?
Catherine, when I left VES 3 years ago, and I look back on my time when I was here for 5 years, the part that I cherished the most were the relationships I built with my great friends on the leadership team and the advancement team, especially with the students and my advisees in particular, with the parents you got to know so well, with the alumni I got to know, with this incredible faculty. And so I know that is what I am most excited about, and it's been a little challenging in the COVID times behind the mask to really get to know people and to break bread with people the way you would hope. But that's the part I'm really looking forward to getting back to.
Wonderful. It certainly does energize us. Well, Garth, thank you so much. This has been just a great conversation tonight, and I really appreciate the dialogue. And we thank the audience for spending your time with us. We know parents and alumni are listening in and learning more about Garth and the vision for the school moving forward. And we're just excited to have you back.
Yep. Well, thank you, Catherine, and thank you for your patience. And I really hope that this is the start of the conversation and the start of our journey together.